Hello and welcome to the Last Looks podcast, a show where we catch up with talented hairstylists and makeup artists in the film and television industry. We'll pick their super creative brains and find out all the good stuff. Join me, your host, Jamie Lee, in finding out what's what in the hair and makeup departments around the world.
And now, a word from our sponsor.
Sammy, great to have you back on the podcast.
Jamie Lee, it's great to be back.
Now, I would love to continue our chat about Hask and Set Bag must-haves. So last week you told us about the amazing collection of nourishing hair oils Hask offers. So what's in the bag this week?
Well, no Set Bag is complete without our 5-in-1 leave-in conditioning sprays. This super popular collection offers 4 different variations, each designed to target a specific hair care problem.
It's true. You never want to be caught without a detangler.
I mean, ain't that the truth? Naughty hair is like the bane of my existence. So just to deep dive into these products a bit, I'll start off with the Argan Oil 5-in-1 leave-in. It conditions and detangles, but does so much more. This is our #1 selling Hask product. We like to call it our miracle product, which has 5 amazing benefits. So formulated with argan oil from Morocco, this specialty blend of ingredients packs your strands with moisturizing and conditioning agents that help restore dry and damaged hair. The 5 benefits are conditions detangles, adds shine, repairs and controls frizz, provides thermal protection, and lastly, moisturizes to prevent breakage. Next, we have our Biotin Boost 5-in-1. It's a lightweight formula that contains biotin, collagen, and coffee, which prevents breakage and helps thicken and detangle fine, limp, thin hair. Then we have our Minoi Coconut 5-in-1, designed with pure coconut oil to soften, detangle, and hydrate super dry strands. So this really improves elasticity for hair so it can feel strong, healthy, and shiny. Finally, there's what quickly has become our hero product. So this is the Tree Oil and Rosemary 5-in-1, which cools, soothes, and revitalizes the hair and scalp. So great point of difference, hair and scalp. Also, don't forget about that thermal protection. And as you can see, getting camera-ready hair is as easy when using the Hask collections. And the hairstylist faves found in their set bags provide just what they need.
I have to say I love the tea tree and rosemary. I'm all about invigorating that scalp and it smells so good.
Thank you. We thought it was really important to come out with a product where the ingredient story is famous for its purifying and invigorating properties.
Thanks again to you and Hask. It has been so awesome having you on the podcast, Sammy, and super informative.
Jamie Lee, it was a pleasure to be here. And let me leave you and your listeners in the trade industry with this. The Hask brand welcomes the opportunity to continue building our relationship with the TV and film styling community. So if we can support a project you're working on, please send us an email at hask@stonemanagement.net and we'd be more than happy to help.
That's so cool, Sammy. Thanks again.
This was so fun. Thank you for having me.
And now, our feature presentation.
Today, I'm speaking with Vincent Van Dyke, makeup effects designer and owner of Vincent Van Dyke Effects Studio based in LA. Vincent and his team have produced work for projects like I Tonya, Star Trek Picard, American Horror Story, and the latest to look out for, Angelyne. Vincent chats about having the opportunity to get into the business at a young age, how he had supportive mentors coming up that shaped him into a successful team leader, business owner, and creative artist.
Pictures up. Last looks. Rolling. And action.
Welcome to the Last Looks podcast, Vincent.
Thank you so much, Jamie, for having me.
Hey, you're welcome. Now, I would like you to finish this sentence for me, okay?
Okay.
Once upon a time, there was a boy named Vincent, and when he grew up, he wanted to be...
a special makeup effects artist.
You did?
Yeah, that has been my dream since far before I can actually remember, which is kind of cool. I mean, when I think back to little Vincent and all the things that he wanted to do, he actually already had a little makeup kit that I had put together with stealing some of my mom's old makeup. Mm-hmm. My mom was a model, and she had an extensive makeup kit of her own.
Nice.
And I would grab stuff from there, and I would have little latex masks that were cut up in it and whatnot. So it's kind of funny that, my furthest memory that I have is of this makeup kit. And, I can't think of a memory that's earlier than that, where I actually discovered the kit and put it together. And so it's always been something that I've been absolutely obsessed with.
Wow. So you can't quite pinpoint the moment of whether you saw your mum's makeup first and thought, that could be fun to play with, or whether, but I'm going to do something more creature orientated and not beauty.
Right. Yeah. No, I can't. I honestly, I don't know what that exact moment was. I mean, the earliest memory that I have of really being super inspired by something was watching. My stepdad was really into old film, and he was watching the original Hunchback with Lon Chaney Sr.
Yeah.
And that silent film was playing. And for, if I'm remembering correctly, I was 5 years old when this was on, and I was on my way walking from the kitchen to my bedroom to go to bed. And I turned around and looked at this screen, and he had a really awesome, huge screen TV that was kind of his theater. And I was mesmerized by this makeup, so much so that I could barely go to sleep. And it was all I could think about, not because I was frightened of it, but I just was so absolutely enthralled with the idea that was not how he really looked. So the next day when I woke up, I remember going to that little makeup kit and specifically taking silly putty out and trying to build up a cheekbone eye weird thing and a pillow on my back and tried to replicate that makeup, which, it's funny, whenever I ask my mom about like those really early years, she always says, well, I thought you wanted to be an actor, the way that you were transforming yourself always, I'm an only child.
Yeah.
And so I was always my own victim. And that, I think, kind of maybe instilled in my parents and whatnot that, I liked the idea of becoming and embodying another character and another person and portraying them. And, I thought that was fun, but I had zero interest in being in front of the camera.
Yeah. It was more that you just didn't have anyone else to use as a guinea pig.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, I imagine that if I had some other, younger brother or something like that, I would probably have been torturing them. But
yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So at what point do you kind of figure out, do you feel like you knew immediately that was a job that somebody had, or did that kind of thought come later?
Yeah, no, good question. I had no idea it was a job. It was just something that I think I found so fun. I mean, I was always such a huge player. I loved playing, I mean, I was very much, which I think is true for a lot of only children. They kind of get immersed into these little worlds where they're really into these creative outlets of playing. And so I absolutely loved playing and make believe and all of that. And I really felt that the makeup outlet, or what I was dabbling with, again, I didn't even know that it was really makeup. I just knew that I liked creating these characters and faces, and I liked changing somebody. I thought the idea of disguise was really quite interesting. And also it really kind of merged into magic as well. I always kind of bring up magic because magic was a big interest. And I think that the correlation between the illusion of a magic trick and the illusion that we are, as professional makeup artists, constantly trying to emulate is trying to fool somebody. To this day, that's my job, is I'm trying to fool somebody. And I think I really embraced that and loved that. But no, I had no idea that it was an actual job that, I would eventually go on and be paid for. It wasn't until I think I started seeing a lot of behind the scenes videos where, you'd see a film, and then it was when DVDs kind of first came on the scene.
Yeah.
And I remember when they started having these special features, and I was so obsessed with the idea of like, oh my God, let's watch how they did this stuff. And when I started seeing all of the makeup artists and special effects artists and the way that these films would come together, it was like the light bulb went off. And I go, oh my God, I've been doing this in my bedroom for so long. I've never even thought that is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. Like, that is my new goal. That's what I have to work towards now. So it kind of changed the idea of like, this is just something that I'm doing where I'm playing.
Yeah.
And it's something that I'm actually going to focus on as a goal, as a career.
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty incredible that something you enjoy so much that was play is something that you can continue on to do as an adult and as a career. It's amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and I think that's key, is that it is absolutely play. And I really think, God, there's a quote that I just read the other day that I thought was so fantastic. It was written on a wall and somebody posted it on their Instagram, but it was basically saying that the creative adult is, and I'm going to botch the quote, but it's like the creative adult is the adult that's child never died. And I think there's something really powerful about the idea of that it's still very much, there's a childlike play quality in what we do. And when you're able to kind of tap into that, it's kind of amazing.
Absolutely. I have this horrible line of thought that I always think if an adult tells me that they don't like animation of any kind, I'm like, your inner child is dead. What is wrong with you?
Yeah. I mean, to a certain extent, it's big red flags are going off for you.
Yeah. I'm like, there's something wrong. This person doesn't know how to play.
This person is clearly a serial killer and we have to be careful.
Yeah, exactly. So I guess going through high school and you're continuing to experiment and play around with stuff. So
yeah, so kind of fast forwarding through that. Yeah, I went into high school and I dropped out of high school promptly after starting. Pretty much, I was about a year into high school, and I was really doing terribly. I was kind of failing all my classes. I'm extremely distracted because all I can think about and all I want to do is this. And so, again, my mom is just so unbelievably supportive. She just saw that that's what I'm going to do. I mean, I remember hearing my mom say this to me so many times, and it rings in my head. And it's so funny that she would say it, but she'd always say, look, I know that this is what you're going to do for the rest of your life. So why am I going to force you to do something that has absolutely nothing to do with what you're going to do with the rest of your life? And why not have you be able to start it now? So, the fact that she saw that and acknowledged it, and also rolled the dice with it and like gambled that this is something that I think he's going to do. Yeah. I can't thank her enough. It's amazing that she allowed that to happen, because I could be, easily 8-9 years behind in my career if it was like, no, you have to finish high school, then you have to go to college, and then we'll figure out what you're going to do from there. But for me to be able to drop out of high school, it allowed me to really just like focus on my craft and start working. So literally at 14, I dropped out and I started sweeping floors at shops, and I started freelancing at that age. Actually, Jason Collins, you mentioned, just before we jumped onto this podcast, is one of those very first people that I worked for.
That's so cool. I love that your mother could see that and had the just the insight to understand that situation, because I think so many parents are just like, as you say, it's just like, no, you've got to finish high school, you've got to go to college. I find that especially have noticed in the States that it is the college education seems to be of the utmost importance, even though you may already know you're not going to use it.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's frustrating.
Yeah. So I think that the time, I mean, I'm sure the people who do go to college but then don't use whatever it is that they were studying, they probably had life lessons and things throughout that and got something from it. But at the same time, to be able to just get out of school and get straight into what you had a passion for is I think it's pretty lucky. It's awesome.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's an interesting point that you make. I mean, it's a little off topic, but the idea that you're having this kind of, you're growing up in college in a sense, right? And you're kind of thrown into adulthood, but in a way that's very juvenile, where you're really protected by the idea that you're still going to school, you're still going to classes, there's still structure. Oftentimes you're under this different housing and whatnot, and it's your first time not living at home. But all of these things, it almost, in my opinion, actually prolongs the childhood experience. And that was something really interesting about me jumping into this very adult world so young, is that, I was not surrounded by anybody my own age. And I think that it actually forced me to, I mean, I was very much a little old soul growing up, but this really kind of forced me to be an adult in an adult world very, very quickly. And I think that it actually helped me in terms of just the way that I conduct myself in business and everything later on in life, because you are not in this kind of party atmosphere. You're working and you're in a very adult world. And I was kind of thrown in head first. So I really appreciate that I had that experience.
Yeah, I think finding you found your professional footing early on.
Yeah, exactly.
That's awesome. So sweeping floors and helping out, and then you start, I assume, getting into painting and sculpting and all of this kind of stuff in the workshops. Like, how does it work when somebody is fresh and coming into a situation like that? So they can start off sweeping floors and tidying up, and then how does that progress?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because even just in the time that I've been in the business, I've watched this progression change tremendously. I mean, it very much used to be, and when I got into the business, it was the same way, where you really have to start from the bottom, and you do have to clean bathrooms and sweep and kind of pay your dues. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think that you're brand new and you're walking into an atmosphere with people that you respect highly, that are far more experienced and skilled than you are. So I really tried to be a sponge and just soak up everything I possibly could. And it took a while before I was able to start sculpting and painting. Even though those were my two focuses, those were really what I wanted to do. It was definitely a while before I got to do the amount of that I actually wanted to. I was given little things here and there, but it wasn't really until I got into the Berman studio and started with Barry and Tom that I was able to kind of grow into that artist and into that kind of position. When I first started for them, the very first day that I walked into their studio, I worked on a show called The Closer, and I was working on detailing a clay pour of a head. And so right off the bat, you would think me being hired as a sculptor per se, that would be the job that I would kind of be thrown into. But, frankly, my skill set as a sculptor at that point was not really that high. I couldn't do anything for them, and I wasn't doing it to their level of what they wanted either. The execution wasn't as high. So I really started again, kind of from the bottom with them, where I really I helped out with cleaning out molds, and I very much was in the lab, to begin with, more so than I was in any kind of art finishing or sculpting position at all. But that is where I was able to actually hone that skill, is because Barry and Tom to this day still are my mentors. So to have them at that early age be kind of guiding my eye and training me to see things that I couldn't see. I often, it's so funny, we were talking about the college education. I often refer to my years at the Berman studio as my college education, because it was so different. It was like, from my freelance days to winding up at the Bermans that one day, I didn't leave for over 10 years.
Wow.
So it was really jumping into this industry, head first, like I said earlier, but then diving into the Berman studio was like I'd found my home, and they just kind of took me under their wing, embraced me, and completely just started training me in so many different avenues. It wasn't just the artistic side of it, but it was also business and how I was kind of orchestrating a studio, hiring people, managing jobs, and supervising these jobs. And I don't really think I even realized to the extent until I look back at it now and see like, wow, that was a lot of responsibility, and I can see exactly what they were doing. But it was laying the foundation for me to really understand all aspects of this work.
Yeah, absolutely. And so coming up through all of that, do you remember like a single piece of advice that somebody gave you that really has stuck with you?
Yeah, I mean, one stands out very clearly. One night that Tom Berman had said to me, and it's not his quote, it's a quote that a lot know, but it was the first time that I had really heard it and had it sink in. And it was, always remember that it is the journey and not the destination. And it really stuck with me because we can often get really tied up in the idea that we have a goal and we want to reach that goal as quickly as we possibly can.
Yeah.
And if we're just focused on that, all of the amazing things from our journey, from our freelance career, from whatever it is that we're doing, from working for other people, it almost can get lost in the mix. You're not appreciating that day-to-day, stuff as much.
Yeah, and maybe not enjoying it and having as much fun.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's very cool. I think it is a good thing to remember. So at what point, because you have Vincent Van Dyke Effects Studio now, so at what point do you think, hey, I'm gonna start up my own shop?
Well, I mean, it was always something that I felt like I wanted. I had felt all my life that it was like, my goal would one day be, as a dream, to have my own studio. It was definitely something that was kind of on my bucket list, if you will.
Yeah.
But kind of going back to that progression at the Bermans, it really laid the groundwork for it. I mean, I often say that my career was a lot of baby steps that eased me into positions that felt comfortable. And as I continued on with my career there at the Bermans, they were at a point towards the end where they were kind of getting ready to retire. And it really was like kind of a smooth transition of, they still had a few shows going on, and it was like I could still work on these few shows and keep working on these shows for them, and then kind of test the waters and start opening up my company. And so that's kind of the way I did it. I just jumped at the chance that felt right. I think that if I didn't take the leap, I knew in that moment that I would regret it forever. It's all timing. And I felt that the time where it did present itself and it felt like the right moment to do it, that I just had to try it.
Yeah.
And so I did. I just jumped into the idea of having my own company, got a really small 1,000 square foot studio space. And it was behind a company out here that we love, Motion Picture Effects. And they had a large warehouse space, and there was just a tiny little area in the back with an office that they just so happened to literally just ask people if they wanted to rent out as a little studio space. So I jumped at it and I did. And I was able to kind of build my own little clientele and my own little crew and make some things for some shows. It just felt like a really important step to me to I almost refer to it as like, moving out of my parents' house and just trying to get my own little apartment and just see what things were like. But it did go full circle to me leaving that space and going back to the Berman studio space, but making it Vincent Van Dyke Effects.
Oh, wow.
Which was a really magical moment for me that my studio now is the old Berman studio, and the history there and the lineage is just, there's not a day that I don't walk in those doors that I don't think about it.
Yeah.
There's not a day that I don't sit in my office and not think that I'm in Tom Berman's old office. I mean, it's really an amazing thing. And especially still to have such an unbelievably close relationship with both of them. I mean, their family, I talk to them, almost every day. So it's really a wonderful thing to have people that have, guided me along the way like that. I just, I'll never be able to thank them enough.
That's amazing. So I guess you kind of feel like you're at home.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, the comfort feeling of being able to like go back to a space that I feel like I kind of grew up in, and the memories of the different jobs and the different shows and the different artists that came through there. And that's the other thing is like the amazing amount of artists that were working for the Bermans when I came into that space too. I talk a lot about, Barry and Tom and the guidance and the influence obviously that they had on my artistic perspective and my skill and technical, all of that, but also all the unbelievable artists that were working there, the technicians that were working there. I was, again, that sponge. I was trying to learn so much from all of those people that were going in and out of those doors who were immense talents. I'm so grateful to have that as well.
That's so cool. So having such strong mentors in your life, do you feel now that you are in a position that you can do that for others?
I mean, I absolutely would love to. I don't feel like I have one particular person who I'm like, guiding or honing into a position, but I definitely feel like when I hire people on my crew, especially the people who I consider part of the full-time family there, they're absolutely people that I strongly take a love for teaching with all of them. And so when they start with me, and I would hope that they think that I'm really trying to guide them into a direction that I feel is the right way of doing things. And I say the right way of doing things. And obviously there's 1,000 ways to do everything in our industry, but it's the way that I like things to be done. And it's the way that I think that things should be done at my studio, which is different from literally every studio in town. And I love that. I love that my perspective on something is different than Jason Collins' perspective on something or Howard Berger's perspective on something. We all are producing the same type of work, but we all still have our own signature ways of doing things. And I think that that's what separates us from each other. So I explain that to people that first start working for me that, I'm not teaching you the only way to do this. In fact, if I do teach you how to do something that you then go off to another studio and freelance at, chances are they're going to have you do it the exact opposite of whatever I've just taught you. And don't be frustrated by that. Keep that in mind. But I do consider that those people that are, walking through my doors that I'm doing that with, that I am mentoring them in a sense and kind of guiding them.
That's awesome. I just want to go back a little bit there. When you were saying about how, you have different ways of doing things and it's like a signature of sorts. Do you think that actually ends up coming through on the finished product of how it actually looks?
I absolutely do. And I think that you sometimes can't put your finger on what that is. Somebody might say that it's style. And it can be style. I think that it can be artistic style that's really, bleeding through on something. But I tend to kind of think a little bit more along the lines of what I think you're getting at, is that sometimes there's a signature that just is something you can't even place, that I can look at work sometimes and go, I know exactly where that came from, or I know exactly who sculpted that. I know whose studio probably produced that work.
Wow.
I know how they go about certain things because there is a certain signature to it. And I love that. I think that that's really a special thing. So it may not be really obvious or blatant, but I do think that the studios having their own styles is what separates us. When someone is looking for a particular shop to do the work for them, I think that they can see that signature and make a choice based off of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's such a visual world that you don't want a cookie cutter situation going on, do you? So that's amazing. I love that. Hey, now when you're hiring for your shop or studio, should I say, what are you looking for in your artists?
That's a great question. I mean, I'm not hiring as often as others probably are. I mean, I really try and keep a crew on as full time as I possibly can, and that is true with, I think, most of the shops in town. We all have our kind of base skeleton crew that we rely on really heavily.
Yeah.
But that crew is really, I mean, we do 90% of all of our work with that base crew. So it's not like I have a revolving door of artists that are coming through on a weekly basis. And some studios are set up that way. And partly it's because of the size of my company. We hear the term boutique shop a lot, and not that I dislike it or anything. I think it's actually probably an appropriate labeling for our studio, because we are a little bit more on the small side, and we definitely focus on work in a very specific way where, we can have 7 different productions going on at one time, which is a lot for our company.
Yeah.
But it's still very much heightened attention on every one of those projects.
Absolutely.
And with that being said, when you have this kind of skeleton crew, we are definitely focusing on it collectively as a company that way. And it's not too many outsiders coming in. But when we do have outsiders come in, I'm usually looking for somebody for that specific talent. For example, we are doing a project now where there's a tremendous amount of armatures that are being built internally for these bodies, and they need to be put together in a way that is structurally very, very sound. So I've got a guy, Caleb, who came in to basically weld and engineer these armatures. And so he's not a regular day player with us, but he's somebody who I bring in often because he is extremely talented at what he does, and he knows exactly how to do it. So I'm looking for somebody that has that experience and that body of work that proves to me that they can do it with their eyes closed, and somebody who I can rely on. I think because we are kind of turned up to 11 most of the time with the amount of shows that we have going on, I can't really bring in somebody who I can't trust. I really have to have somebody in there that I know I can walk away from and that can do the work exceptionally, no matter what department they're in. But with that being said, when there are new artists that come in, when we do need extra pair of hands, and it is somebody who maybe doesn't have that experience, that is when I'm looking for work that they've done on their own. That is the biggest thing that I look for personally when I'm looking at someone's portfolio that maybe just graduated school. And the main thing I mean by that, when I say work being done at home or on their own, I mean the work that they didn't do in school. I don't want to see a portfolio that's filled with only the tasks that were given to you at school that you had to do, that you did to basically get your diploma or your certificate or whatever it may be to graduate. To me, that's kind of the bare minimum. If I'm looking at a portfolio that's filled with just those items, it shows me a lack of passion and a lack of dedication, in my opinion, that I would then see in someone's portfolio that is completely just chock full of amazing work that they've been doing on their own in their bedroom. It could be a latex mask. It could be just a sculpture. It could be a makeup they did on their, roommate. But all of those things that kind of show me that they've been trying to do this stuff on their own at home from the foundation that they built, whether it was from going to school or maybe they were just learning on their own, watching, videos and instructional, DVDs and things like that. But seeing the work that they did on their own, to me, that is what I look for, because I also think that it really tips the hat towards work ethic. I think that if you see somebody who's got a really large body of work of stuff that they have done on their own, I think that gives me a little idea that they have really strong work ethic. So those are two things that I think stand out really strongly in my mind for, a fresh portfolio.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's going above and beyond, isn't it? Instead of just doing the bare minimum.
Exactly. Yeah, it's exactly it. And I think when you see that, it's impressive because it is somewhat rare, which it shouldn't be, but it is. And when I do see it, I'm always, I've always got a smile on my face because it reminds me of the way that I was in my bedroom. I wasn't going out and socializing and going to parties. I was making latex masks in my bedroom. I was really trying to hone my skill as much as I possibly could. And so I love to see that.
Yeah, it's amazing. I still remember coming from New Zealand, we do both makeup and hair. And in LA, I'm a hairstylist. But back in New Zealand, it was makeup and hair. And I knew from a very early time in doing makeup that I was not a special effects makeup artist because I was like, I do not have the passion that these guys have. And I love that they have so much passion about it and they need it because if you don't have it, it's just not, the work isn't, it's just going to show through the work. And I was just like, so figured that out very early. It's just like, as much as I love looking at it and think it's just so awesome and amazing, I was just like, that I cannot put 100% into it. So I'm just going to, of course, be an all-rounder of, do the bruising and the cut and the scrape and the bits and pieces like that. But the full creature stuff, I was just like, there's like another level of amazingness that I can't focus on. It's
great that you were able to acknowledge that and see that within yourself, because I think so many people don't. And they keep kind of pushing forward and trying to make something happen. But, if you're honest with yourself and you see that, I mean, it's great. I say this often, and it sometimes is perceived the wrong way, but I often say that I think you need to be obsessed with the work, and sometimes in almost an unhealthy way, you need to be obsessed with the work, because I don't think if you're completely immersed in it, you can really get great at it. I think when you're in those early years and even beyond, you have to really eat, sleep, and drink that work. It has to be, you have to have your life kind of revolve around it and really just have it kind of take over your entire being.
Yeah, well, it's a lot to learn, isn't it? I mean, it's an art that you're creating. It's amazing. I wonder, at the point that you are now, do you continue with education and learning?
Absolutely, yeah. I often refer to something that Barry Berman would say is that the day you stop learning is the kiss of death. I hold that very near and dear to my heart because I believe it to be 100% true. I think that anybody that believes that they have gotten to a place where they've kind of mastered something, or that they're there, is the day that they stop progressing as an artist. They've plateaued. So I naturally am my worst critic. I mean, I really tear apart everything that I do in probably an unhealthy way. And some people have that innately in them. And some people, I think, have to kind of work at let me analyze my work and figure out what's going on. But I think it's really important to be self-critical and look at your work subjectively and constantly try and push the bar. So yes, if I ever feel like there's not something for me to learn, I would feel as though I should retire and not do this work anymore, because I'd feel like I've probably lost it, and I'm not gonna progress, and I'm not gonna be a good artist, and so I'm gonna just pack up my tools and go home. So I certainly hope I never get to the point where I stop learning.
So how do you think you are still learning? Is it just through pushing yourself within the studio of what jobs you take on and just bettering the end result, like that product that you are creating, or do you still kind of do formal education stuff, or watch other people's work, or how do you normally tend to keep learning? I guess from people that you're working with as well, right?
Exactly. Yeah, that kind of hits the nail on the head for me. It's a great question, and I think it's multifaceted, but I think that you just kind of nailed it there, is that when you surround yourself with people who you feel are better than you, there isn't a day that I walk in my studio where I don't feel like I'm picking something up. I mean, I feel that everybody on my crew, whatever their strength is, whatever their task that I feel that they are kind of the lead of, that they do it far better than I could do it. And I think that's very important for the person who's running that studio to enlist people that really can surpass what they are capable of. And so with that being said, anytime that I'm looking at the work that's being produced by any one of them, I am looking at their technique and the way that they're doing something. And obviously I'm still at this point guiding the way that certain things are being done. And I'm very technical in the work as well. I mean, we talk about the fact that I sculpt and paint a lot, and that is my primary role. But I did start out as a mold maker. and casting prosthetics. Those were my two jobs that I probably did the most of when I was freelancing.
Yeah.
And so I still really love that. I love being able to break down a mold and look at a mold and really get technical with it. I mean, one of my favorite things is to have Rob Freitas, who is, one of the best mold makers in the world, come over to the shop and have a beer and tech talk and talk about molds and look at pictures of molds and really get in depth on discussing, the engineering of a mold. I love it. And so I'm always learning from those discussions. Carl Lyon is our mold shop supervisor at the studio in-house, and he is a brilliant mold maker. And so having those discussions, if I'm ever in a room where I've got Rob and Carl and we're both kind of, we're spitballing with each other, those are moments where my brain is about to explode with knowledge. And I love that. I've got Daniel Tirananzi as my lead sculptor and painter, and he's absolutely brilliant. I mean, he was sculpting a baby for us yesterday. And, I walked into the sculpting room and I was just so floored because he had blocked out the head and it looked amazing. And I walked in a couple hours later and the head was completely changed. And I asked him about it and he goes, well, the proportions were wrong. And I noticed that, the eyes needed to be lowered and the back of the head needed to be shaved down. And then I needed to bring the mouth a bit lower as well. That self-analyzing quality that he has, I admire so much, because to be able to look at your own work in that moment when you're blocking out a sculpture, for example, and realize what's wrong with it, it blows me away. It's still something that I don't feel that I have where, when I'm working on something, I sometimes can't place what's wrong with it. That's what I rely on other people to, be able to help guide me and have those fresh pair of eyes and say, hey, what is it about this that's not working? That's one thing I love about the shop is that we all collectively really communicate with each other really well about what's going on. Whether it's artistic or technical, I think it's important to look at those things and vibe off each other and figure out what the best way to do something is. So I think those are the ways that I really feel that I'm constantly growing as an artist and a technician.
That's very cool. I think too, being open to actually having other eyes look at your work and say, hey, it might just be this bit, because instead of getting your back up and being like, what do you mean? It's perfect.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's certainly times where I think we do that. Our ego plays a factor with all of us. And I think the times that those happen is when you're not looking for it, where you think that what you're doing is good and is hitting it exactly where you feel that it should. And somebody walks by and says something like, hey, I kind of think that jaw is a little strong. And you're like, what the hell are you talking about? I'm in love with this thing. But I think that those are the moments that we have to listen to them even more, because if you start to get too emotionally attached to your work, it's so difficult to change it. It's so difficult to step away and look at it subjectively. So anytime that I do start loving something that I'm doing, I almost think there's something must be wrong. Like if I love this right now and I think everything is going fantastic, I probably should walk away and look at this again tomorrow with somebody else and be like, okay, what am I doing wrong here? Because I probably shouldn't be enjoying it.
Yeah, I think it is the walking away situation. I mean, I even find that with just simply hairstyling. Sometimes I need to actually physically just leave it as it is and be like, go get your costume on, do whatever, and come back. And then I can clearly see like, oh, okay, I understand now what needs to happen.
It's funny you say that, because I think I do the same thing. If I'm ever applying a makeup, I tend to take it to a place that feels like it's maybe 90% there. And then it's like, okay, let's get the brows on, let's get the wig on, let's get whatever, hair that needs to go on this piece, because it changes everything. And then all of a sudden it opens up your eyes to things you didn't see before. Yeah. So, it sounds like the same thing for you with other aspects of that complete character, where like all of a sudden everything kind of clicks into place and you go, okay, now I can see it.
Yeah. Cause I think sometimes I'm too in it. Like I'm in the situation and too close to it, and it's just
hyper focused.
I need to step back and just see the whole situation and be like, oh no, now I get it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
That's awesome. So I assume that's something you encourage your team to do as well, as continue on with learning and education, because I think it would be sad if you kind of noticed one of them not.
Yeah, for sure. It is something that I think you can notice when somebody becomes dormant and they start to plateau a bit and they're kind of in an artistic rut. And you do see that. I mean, it's hard with what we do for a living, because it is the passion that we had from little kids, right? And so I think because it is that passion, and when you start to blend and marry that passion together with something that you now do for your livelihood, and you're trying to make money at it, and it is a job that you go to every day, I don't care what it is you do in life and how much you love it. There are going to be days that are difficult. There's going to be days that are absolutely grueling and a job. Yeah. And days that I'm looking out the window wishing that I was at the beach. I mean, that of course is going to happen in any profession under the sun. So I think that when I do see, one of my artists or technicians or anybody at the shop have those moments, that is the time when I do encourage, like, all right, I see that you're maybe getting a little bored with what you're doing, or you're getting a little kind of caught up in the fact that it is work and it is a job. These are the moments where you have the ability to be able to do the personal projects, and you have the ability to be able to step away and work on maybe it's a makeup for yourself, maybe it's a sculpture, maybe it's a painting, maybe it's poetry. I mean, it really doesn't matter what it is that you love as a hobby for yourself on the side. Yeah. I think it's just really important to have an outlet, whatever that outlet may be. And I think thankfully everybody there at my shop has an outlet that is theirs, that they truly have a separation from the studio and the work that they do for us and the work that they do for themselves. Cool. And when I see that, that's another whole inspiring factor, in and of itself. And when I see that, it inspires me to then want to do my personal stuff, because, at the end of the day, that's the stuff that really gets me excited also. I mean, I love what I do and I love the jobs that the studio brings in, but the true love and passion that I have, I start to get really excited when they're my jobs and they're my projects, where I go, hey, I want to make a Bigfoot suit just to make a Bigfoot suit right now. And that's what we're going to do. And that's the stuff that is really, getting me my, creative outlet. It's getting it's getting it out of my system and then completely letting me, pour that into this project that has nothing to do with the shop work. And I love that.
Yeah, it's just having that vision and following it through, and it's all yours, right?
Yes, yeah, completely.
Because you're hired for all sorts of projects, and it's I guess the origin of that vision is coming from somewhere else.
Exactly. Yeah, I've often used the line that we are very talented hands that are here to execute someone else's vision.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I really think that that's one of those things that is hard for a lot of artists to embrace and understand. But I do think that if you look at it that way, it is a little easier. And I emphasize a little easier, because it's still difficult to look at somebody else's design and somebody else's passion project and go, all right, it's not what I would do. It's not what I think should be done. Yeah. But I need to bring my skill set to the table and figure out how I can execute this in a way that fulfills me artistically, but also is executing it to a level of quality and aesthetic that is going to please them. And there's an art form in that, and trying to find that art form is, I feel like I'm ever chasing that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, so you guys are doing all sorts of projects. Can you explain that spectrum to me? So how does it all work? So you have small jobs, large scale jobs, you're working on designs with heads of departments or directors or producers or... Yeah,
it's all of that. Yeah, completely. It's very multifaceted, and the way that we get jobs and who we're working with changes all the time. I mean, I would say that more often than not, we are brought in by the HOD. We're brought in by that department head of makeup that has chosen us for the work that needs to be done for their film or their television show. Mm-hmm. And then it's a very close collaboration with said department head and how we're going to execute the makeup that they need for that show. And it may be for the entire season or the entire film, or it may just be one specific character for one specific episode or scene or moment in a film. But that is generally how we get our jobs. And then the other way, of course, is through producers and directors that we have worked with in the past that liked working with us and we have built a relationship with, and then they'll bring us back on. And that's fantastic as well. Those jobs are different in the sense that we will tend to have a little bit more freedom. Mm-hmm. We tend to structure things a little bit differently with those jobs because we are the first hire. So things are kind of designed a little bit differently.
Okay.
But those are kind of the avenues. And then as far as the spectrum of work, it's definitely very broad. I would say that my company, for the most part, is known more for kind of character work and realistic work, body duplication, character makeup, prosthetic makeup that is a little bit more in line with realism, mm-hmm. A little less of the fantasy and creature work. We tend not to get as much of that. And I'm not actively not trying to get that. It's just companies often do get not pigeonholed, but they get a reputation that's built on the type of work that I think they have the most experience with and that their portfolio shows off the most.
Yeah.
And for us, it's that, it's a lot of medical work. It's a lot of body duplication. It's a lot of old age and character work. Thankfully, that is my favorite type of work to do. So it's nice that we were able to start landing a lot of that work really early on and be able to have that be our bread and butter because it just so happens to be my favorite type of work. But more recently, we have been able to kind of broaden our horizons and work on some stuff that has definitely stretched our artistic muscles. And we've gotten into the world of fantasy a lot more. I mean, we just finished last year Star Trek Picard, which was a huge undertaking for us. It was probably the largest scale show that we've ever worked on in terms of the number of aliens and creature work that we were producing out of the company. It by far was the most volume, by far the most people hired at one time. That was a huge, huge undertaking for the company. And it was also probably the furthest away from our comfort zone.
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting. I mean, when we got that job, I think I had one alien in our portfolio as a company,
Wow.
which is interesting because you would think that the company that had that one alien would never get that job. I tip my hat to the production on that show because oftentimes we run into producers that think if I don't see it in your portfolio, it means you can't do it. Which is awfully frustrating, I think, for us as artists in general, right? I mean, it's like, I think we all suffer with the idea that if I don't have this specific thing you're looking for, you automatically believe that my skill set is not capable of executing it.
Yeah.
It just couldn't be further from the truth. It's like, you know, for me, when we talk about looking for certain things in a portfolio, well, if somebody showed me their portfolio and they had a perfect nose prosthetic, a nose prosthetic that looked 100% realistic, it was applied brilliantly, it was colored beautifully, it was blended nicely, I would be very, very, very impressed with that. I would be far more impressed with that than I would be a full creature makeup in their portfolio.
Yeah.
I think it's far more difficult to execute really, really well. And I have enough, you know, wherewithal to know that if they can execute that nose really well, that they're going to be able to execute a creature really well because they have that detail, finite experience on how to do that. I kind of think that production is looking at us that way for Picard, where, you know, when our initial meeting, they had a conversation with us that was really geared around the idea that they wanted these aliens to feel super realistic, organic, natural, part of the story, not distracting, not something that's going to take you out of it. Really have something that just feels like it kind of blends in with everything else, which really just, it sparked my interest and got me so excited about a project that I was already really excited about. And it made me feel like we actually were the perfect shop for that production. So it really kind of instilled that in me, which was amazing.
Yeah, I was going to say that while you were explaining that you didn't have, you know, much alien work in your portfolio, but I was just like, it's probably the realism that they're drawn to, and because it is actual humans in human form, but you're manipulating that to make them look like they're from another universe or planet. You still want it to look real and believable.
Exactly.
So,
I mean, everything we do is based in reality. I always say that. I mean, even if you're giving me an alien or a creature or just some crazy fantastical thing, we are still basing it in reality. We always are. I mean, we're looking at nature, we're looking at insects, we're looking at aquatic life, we're looking at people, we're looking at deformities. I think when we pull from nature is when we're able to execute something that subconsciously feels real to a viewer that otherwise wouldn't know why something didn't feel real. And that to me is a goal that I will always try my best to get to, where again, I think that the average person may not be able to point the finger at exactly what doesn't work on a makeup, but they can always tell you when something doesn't work. They just don't know what it is, but you know, they can easily say, and often I actually respect the opinion of somebody who is so far outside of our business when they do or do not like something. I think that they have a great eye for it because they're so unbiased and they're going to be subjective in a way that completely comes from a place of just pure aesthetic quality, looking at it, just saying, you know, this feels right or it feels wrong. But I do feel that subliminally they are going to be innately drawn to something that is at least somehow based in nature, because I think we associate nature with something that feels plausible. And if we're able to kind of convey that in the work, then I do believe that viewer is going to accept it more readily than somebody that goes, all right, I'm going to throw 15 noses on this alien and completely just go crazy with some really fantastical design that is just out of my imagination on an acid trip that I had in my early years. You know, hey, it's cool and I love it and I love the expression and I love where someone's going with it. but it's definitely not the way that I approach the work that we do.
Yeah, no, it makes total sense. I mean, that viewer, they want to believe what they're seeing.
Exactly.
That's very cool. So are there certain makeup department heads that you have worked with multiple times?
Definitely, yeah. I mean, I think the relationships that we build with department heads they are such a huge reason why the studio continues to work. I mean, building relationships that are with people that you feel like you can collaborate with really well is also extremely important. I mean, the last thing in the world you want is to be hired and feel like a vendor that is just supplying a makeup artist with pieces that they could have bought from the store. You know what I mean? Like it's not something where we want to just feel like we're filling orders.
Yeah.
And if I'm getting that feeling, then, it's very clear that this isn't the type of relationship that I want as a collaborative artist and as somebody who runs a studio in that manner. I want somebody who I'm having conversations with that are really open to the discussion across the board of design, execution, how we're breaking a makeup down, the color of the prosthetics, just kind of everything. And yeah, I mean, there's so many that we work with that are great with that. I mean, Aaron Kruger-McCash, right off the top of my head, is definitely someone who continually comes to us to do work with in that collaborative way that I absolutely love. Chris Nelson, we work with often in that way, and really is a collaborative designer with us, where we are able to kind of run with him on a show and feel like it is something that we're building together, which I love. Kate Bisco, Susie Diaz, Debbie Zoller, James McKinnon, Kazu Hiro is a prime example of somebody who I absolutely love working with on all of his shows. I mean, he is, I put him on a pedestal of greatness. Yeah. So that's really a side of this that I absolutely love is the collaborative nature of what we do. I mean, that's to me where you can have magic happen, because you are able to have someone else's perspective join in on that discussion and create something that you normally would not have been able to create on your own.
Yeah. So what has been one of the most challenging projects, do you think, that you've taken on? Whether it's just you individually in the past or the studio itself?
It's probably a project that I can't speak tremendously about because it's still in production.
Okay.
But Angelyne is the show that we were on before the lockdown, and it was completely the most challenging show I've ever been on in my entire career. Wow. But it was also by far the most rewarding.
They normally are, I think.
Yeah, they do go hand in hand, don't they? So yeah, and for so many reasons across the board on both sides of that fence. Yeah. But that to me, and I'm asked often, what is your favorite thing that you have worked on? And I always answer that with, it's usually the thing that I'm either currently working on or the last thing that I just finished, because I think it's the most
fresh in the mind.
Exactly. It's fresh. Yeah. And so, I think because we're all so self-critical of ourselves that it hasn't aged enough for me to hate it.
Right.
And that's most of the stuff that we do is like, after a certain amount of time, when I look back at it, I've been able to pick it apart so thoroughly that I start to absolutely not like the look of it anymore.
I think you've just made me realize that I do that as well, because if somebody gives me a compliment about something I did like a couple of years ago, I'm like, oh, really? Okay. Yeah, thanks. That's really nice of you to say, but
But that's why, yeah, Jamie. I think that's why we do that. I think because we have already grown past that point. We already know that we could do better. And if you look at, I mean, obviously these are things we would never say to a production. We would never say, oh God, don't look at that. I can do better now. But I think that for us as artists, I think that acknowledgement of the fact that we can do better, that we can move past something is kind of huge. So when it's fresh in the mind and it's something that we just finished that we think is up to at least a standard that we currently are accepting of ourselves. I think that's the stuff that I tend to favor. And so Angelyne was that for me. As a whole, we were doing that with Kate Bisco. She was the department head and designer on it. Awesome. Along with us designing the prosthetics for the show. It ended up being a really massive prosthetic show, more so than I think I even anticipated going into it. And Angelyne, just to give you a quick rundown, especially for anybody listening who's not in Los Angeles. Angelyne is a woman who drives around in a pink Corvette in Hollywood and has been doing it for, I'd say since the early 80s, really, and got famous for putting herself on billboards. She was really kind of doing the social media thing before social media existed, and really kind of shoving her content down everyone's throat in a way before you could have that being done on Instagram or Facebook or whatever it may be.
Right.
And she got absolutely famous for it. And so to this day, she drives around in this pink Corvette and sells merchandise and is still doing it.
That's amazing.
This show was starring Emmy Rossum, who is portraying her throughout her life from the age, early age, on. And it's really kind of a fantastic piece. And that has been awesome. That's been a really amazing job for us.
That's very cool. I look forward to, I think I saw a little clip of it, and it did introduce me to who she was.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't aware of it being someone from out of town. And it is that thing of just like, what are you famous for? You're being famous for, it's amazing. I think it's quite incredible.
She was kind of like like the Kim Kardashian of her time, where it's like, where did you come from, and why are you so famous? But I love the fact that she was able to do that way, and this story tells it really well without giving anything away. It's really been a cool thing. We've had Mike McCash as kind of the prosthetics lead for her on it, doing the makeup with Kate, and it's been a brilliant job. It's really been one of my proudest. That's
awesome. So is there a type of project that you haven't done yet that you would like to kind of sink your teeth into?
Oh, that's interesting. I think there are. It's funny because the work that we do, it's very repetitive in the sense that sometimes we'll get a job that we've done 100 times in a sense. Meaning if we're hired to design and create an old age makeup, one could say that you've done 20 old age makeups prior to it. How could you get excited, and how can you really get inspired to create this new old age makeup? But to me, they're all individually so incredibly different, and it's something that I always try and remind my crew of as well, because we can easily start to get in that monotony where we're like, okay, we've done this so many times. How many babies have we done? How many, surgery pieces have we done, or pregnant bellies, or whatever these things may be? But the truth of it is that every single one of them is absolutely unique. And this goes back to something that Tom Berman used to always tell me, which in the moment would be extremely frustrating. But he would say that, everything we're doing that we're sending to set is a prototype. And it really sunk in with me later on when I realized, holy shit, he's right. Even if it's something we've done before, it's the first time that we did it on that actor. It's the first time that we sculpted it that way and molded it that way, because every single time you do it, even if you had a forehead appliance and you set up 10 positives of all of these different 10 talent the exact same way, all 10 of those forehead positives have their own parameters and their own nuances to them that can either cause problems or, make things more successful. I mean, so the reason why I'm saying all of this is that I feel that there are so many jobs that we've already done that I've absolutely loved. But if I got a call tomorrow to do a job that sounded identical to it, I would be just as excited, because it's a whole new set of parameters that allow us to explore that job again. So for me, like old age and character makeup is still the thing that I find the most interesting and the most fascinating to do. So if I get a call next week for a massive old age job where I've got to, have 5 or 6 age progressions for the entire film, to me, that is the job that I get the most excited about, that I'm like, through the roof, giddy, like that little boy in me where I'm getting excited to play starts to come out in me. And so even though we've done jobs that are in a sense similar to that, I haven't gotten that exact call with those actors and that story. So that starts to get me really excited about the work that I love. So I think that to me, it's driven by the type of work that I really enjoy doing, which is that realistic character work. And so anytime we get a call for a job like that, I'm very, very excited.
That's awesome. I love the way you look at that. I think others may forget that subtle little point. I think that's, it's very cool. So now that how long have you had your studio?
We are going on 10 years.
That's awesome. Congratulations.
Yeah, we're thank you. Yeah, I think we're about to hit that 10-year mark. It's really been an amazing journey for us. And, it's funny. It correlates really well with me meeting my wife. My wife, Sasha Camacho, who is our hair department head of the studio. She does all of our lace wigs and brows and facial hair. She punches all of the hair on everything that we do. I mean, she's absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, beautiful work.
I always say that she's the icing on the cake for everything that we do.
Yeah.
I met her right before I opened up the doors to my shop. And so, to kind of make that that connection. It's that journey that we've kind of had together of going through this and reflecting on it, and having her by my side through that whole thing that's been really magical. It's nice to be able to work with somebody that you're in a relationship with that doesn't feel like you're down each other's throat the whole day.
Yeah.
You know, it's like there's enough separation with what we do in our departments where she can be absolutely in her own world for an 8-hour day. And I'll see her once popping my head in, giving her a little wave, and that's it. And so even though we work together and it's got that really lovely comfort feeling of knowing that we're together while we work and that we're just kind of flowing through the studio together and creating together, we're not butting heads and bashing together. I mean, it's not like she's sculpting with me or she's making molds with me or anything like that. It really has enough separation where it feels like this great dance, which I appreciate so much.
Yeah, that's very cool. Hey, so now that you've been doing this for coming up 10 years, what skill set do you think is necessary to run a makeup effects studio successfully?
It's a really good question. I think it's a subjective question as well. I think that we would all have really, really specific answers to that. I mean, obviously, if you asked every studio owner, they're probably going to give you a different response.
I guess what's worked for you?
Yeah, I think so. Okay, so what's worked for me, and the reason why I opened up my studio, it goes back to a story with Tom Berman. It was a day where, and I've told this story before. I don't think I've told it on a podcast, though. It is a time where there was probably 10 people working in the shop. And that day, everybody screwed up. Everybody in that shop had messed up what they were doing. And I had broke a mold in half. It was an autopsy scar that I was needing to mold and cast that same day. And I made the mold. I broke the mold. And again, everybody in the shop had just done something wrong. And I remember Tom walking through these double doors of the shop and looking around and checking in with everybody and just being, devastated, obviously, because everything was going so terribly wrong. Yeah. And he just asked us all to go home in a very polite, nice way. It wasn't like you guys are fired and aggressive and, making us all feel like shit. It was just like, hey guys, just, pack it up. I'll see you guys in the morning. And really hard for me because I'm just like, oh my God, I want to stay and help you. I want to make all this right. I want to try and at least do my part on what I did to fix it. And he said, Vince, it's just better if I'm just left alone. And so everybody left. We grabbed our stuff and we took off for the day. But that next morning when we walked into the shop, every single piece that had screwed up was all laid out on a table and it was done beautifully. My mold was repaired and a silicone prosthetic was cast from that mold. And everything else that was wrong that day had been either corrected or redone and was laid out on this table. I mean, he must have worked all night to do this. And it was this serene moment. The studio was also immaculate, by the way. He cleaned everything too, which was like, okay, on top of it, dude, you had to do that. But we all kind of looked at each other and we didn't say anything. We all just went back to what we were doing and we grabbed the stuff. And a lot of that stuff was being picked up that day, by production to literally go out to shoot. And it was that day, in that moment, that light bulb went off for me and said, okay, I know you want to have a studio. You need to learn every aspect of this job well enough that if your crew decided that they all had to take off because they went out and got food poisoning at lunch, they didn't decide to do that. It happened. They didn't ask for it. But if they all got food poisoning at lunch and they can't work and they literally are all running home and they're throwing up, whatever's going on, are you stuck with a position where you are wringing your hands because you don't know how to do most of the tasks in your own company? And you're like, well, we're screwed. I'm going to have to call production and tell them that they can't have this tomorrow, or I've got to scramble and try and call people to come in right now. It was that moment that I was like, all right, I want to be able to know, not master, not be the best at, but at least know enough to get by in every aspect of the work that my studio is going to produce. And not only for the fact that I could be able to do it if somebody were to go down or be sick or have to go home or whatever it may be, but also for the fact that I think it's really important to be able to look at the work and know what's right and wrong, know what's going to potentially be a problem down the line, be able to stop somebody and say, hey, I've been in your shoes. I've done that. I've cast pieces. I've sprayed baldies. I know exactly why that's not going to work. I know why that's going to lock. I know why that paint job is going to go muddy if you continue on. All those little things that I think a good supervisor or a good, shop owner can look at and see, for me, was instilled in me that day and made me realize, okay, that to me is a key factor for me to have a successful studio. And the flip side of that as well is, for me personally, it meant that I needed to be at the studio always. It meant that I am not going to actively go to set very often at all. In fact, it's going to be very rare for me. And I'm only going to go, a few days here and there. That 90% of the time I am at my studio every single day. And there's not a piece that doesn't leave my studio without my eyes looking at it. I feel that I owe it to anybody who's hiring my company that, my name is literally on the product and it deserves my attention in some capacity to make sure that it upholds that signature that we talked about.
Absolutely. That's amazing. God, I can't imagine. Oh, I feel like I would end up doing something like that too. What he did is just be like, just everybody go home. Just going to sort this out myself.
It's so relatable, isn't it? Like, it's such a relatable thing. And every time I think about it, I go, because I've had moments like that in my shop where I literally think about that day and I go, Tom, I totally get it. Like, I want everybody to leave because there are certain things that are faster done yourself than explaining to someone else what to do.
Yeah.
Luckily, I'm at a point now with my crew and the people that I have at my studio where they know exactly what I want. I mean, I'm so fortunate and so fucking lucky to have a crew that they're going to do something. They have to ask me very little about it. And because they've done it for so long for me now. I mean, I have people that have been with me now for 10 years that are absolutely in sync with me. And so I don't have to sit down and go over it ad nauseum to them. It's like they know the color of something I want. They know how soft I want something plasticized. They know exactly how I want a mold broken down. They know exactly the way I would sculpt something. It's like this dance where everybody is in sync with each other and we all have that same common goal and same aesthetic that we're driving at, which I think collectively makes that signature. And when we all work together to make whatever it is that we're making, I think collectively we have that collaborative nature where it then has its own embodiment of what my studio represents. It really represents all of us collectively having very similar, standards. And I love that. I love the fact that we're all kind of trying to reach that common goal on a daily basis.
Yeah, I think that's amazing. And I would love to understand a little bit more, I think, too, about the fact that you've had people with you for that amount of time. And it's just like, what is it that, what are you doing to keep them? I mean, management skills of creative artists can be very difficult, I think. And especially when you've got time crunches and you've got, just getting so busy and the hours that you can do and things like that. I think it's a wonderful thing that you have had people working under you for that long that continue to want to work with you. Like, it's amazing.
Well, thank you. I mean, I try and think that that's what it is, but truly it's just that I threaten them all on a daily basis that if they ever leave.
Okay, so...
I think that, it's funny when I got into this business, especially when I realized that I wanted to definitely own my own studio. And that was the goal. Never did I realize just how much work the business side of it was, the orchestrating of the teams and the personalities. There's, to say that the day-to-day activity that I go through is dealing with people and the people are the work is an understatement. I mean, the work, you can do the work, but it's the people that will just drive you insane. And I don't mean that being my crew specifically. I just mean that in general, it's dealing with so many different personalities and so many different people on so many different levels on a daily basis that you're like, I'm done. I don't want to talk to anybody right now. I just want to go sculpt, or I just want to go paint, or I just want to go do something. So I think the biggest thing for me was to learn how to manage and deal with people and figure out the best way to communicate with different personality types, how to handle different types of people and manage different types of people. And so that's been a really large aspect to the job. I think that I do enjoy, having that ability to orchestrate these teams, but it is difficult. But I like to think that the reason why so many people have stayed with us for so long is I try and make it as much of a family atmosphere as I possibly can. We're very sheltered at the company. We are very small, and I am very selective on who comes into our world because it is so specific, and what we are driving at with that signature and the quality is so specific. I mean, I talk about how everybody kind of collectively knows what I like. Well, you can imagine the difficulty of bringing somebody fresh in who maybe has 30 years of experience, who's fantastic. It doesn't mean they're not going to do the job right. They're just not going to do it the way that I want it.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'm open to the idea of, hey, please come in and show me something new. Show me the way you do something. I would absolutely love to see it, but it isn't necessarily sometimes the way that I think it should be done. And so I think collectively, when we all have that same ideology, it makes them want to still be a part of that, because so many people that have worked for me have freelanced other places and they have gone to other places to experience the way that things are run differently. And I think that they like the idea of having the comfort of knowing that often once they start to learn the way that I like something, they can then adopt the way that they like something, but they're still executing it to the level that I want. And I think that that's really a specific reason why so many people enjoy working at the shop, is that I am a big micromanager in the beginning, but I start to become less of that micromanager when you're giving me the quality and the style of work that I expect.
Yeah.
And a lot of the time that means that they're finding their own ways of doing something. You know, we've got a girl, Gwen Ramsey, who's been with us now for, I believe, a little over 5 years. And she is a phenomenal artist across the board, but she is a great example of somebody who came in really, really fresh, and we were able to kind of mentor and guide into something. But she now, again, she's one of those people who absolutely does her job better than I could. And I respect and appreciate that so much, where I'm able to completely hand something over to her and at the end of the day have it be exactly what I want. But she's doing it her own way. She's getting there in her own process. She's talking to, you know, Carl, for example, or, you know, somebody else in the shop to help kind of figure out the best way for the mold to be broken down, for the best casting to come out, to be able to fit an internal skull inside of for something that she's going to fabricate down the line. I think that the key there is really great communication within that family of artists that are working together. And if you have that great communication where they're kind of riffing off each other, it builds that atmosphere that I think they enjoy. And so I hope that those are all the reasons why they continue to want to be a part of the company, and that we are all kind of still standing for a signature and a quality that we all feel is where we should be. And sometimes we don't hit it, but that's okay, because we're striving to hit it every time. But it's just, you know, you're not gonna win them all, but it's what we try and do.
Yeah. Do you find that if you verbally actually say to somebody when you start working with them, like, yes, you may find that I am micromanaging you a bit, but as time goes on, what you're explaining, do you think it's good for them to know that?
It probably would be if I told them that,
Yeah. No, I'm just wondering, it's just that, because when you're talking about that, you knew that you needed to learn how to manage people. It's just like, well, how did you do that? Was it just figuring it out as you go and be conscious that you needed to...
I think it's trial and error. I'm probably less aware of it, but if you talk to somebody who worked for me, even 10 years ago, you would probably find that I was maybe terrible at communicating what I wanted or giving them the guidance that I needed. I know that I was definitely a lot harder on people when I first was a supervisor, and especially when I was working for the Bermans as a supervisor. When I was put in the position of a supervisor there, I feel that I was harder because it was for somebody else. And I think that having the pressure of knowing that not only do I think that it should be a certain quality, a certain standard, but I also have the legacy of the Berman studio held above my head, and that I need this quality to even exceed my expectations.
Yeah.
And I think that I was even harder on people and really cracked the whip more than I probably do now because of that idea that it needed to be that. I think at this point now, I've really softened a lot in the idea of how I communicate what I want, because there's no reason for it to be aggressive, and there's no reason for it to be, not fun. We want to push people and we want them to do better. And I do think that I am still very specific with what I want. Will Thornton runs our silicone casting department. He's kind of a great example of somebody who, got put in that position, exceeded my expectations quite quickly and did a wonderful job with it. But I think specifically, he would be somebody who could tell you, no, he'll throw pieces in the trash because of that quality that he's looking for. And I'm not afraid to do that. I definitely want him to not only become a better prosthetic technician casting pieces, but I also want to make sure that I'm being true to what I think is the best prosthetic that is going to be put into those makeup artist hands that we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
The last thing in the world I ever want to have happen is a makeup artist to call me and go, hey, I can't burn through this edge, and the color of this piece is totally wrong. To me, that's beyond devastating.
Yeah.
And I think that's the reason why I am the way that I am, and the way that we run things is the way that we do. But I think that that's part of it, is learning how to do it. I mean, the evolution of the way that I'm learning how to orchestrate a team is going to be something that evolves and that I continue to learn, just as I continue to learn, how to be a better artist. I think that isn't going to stop either. I mean, I think that the way that I manage a crew will probably evolve. And if you were to ask me this question 5 years from now, it'll probably be different than the way I answer it now.
Yeah. I guess when you're dealing with different personalities as well, it's just,
exactly.
evolving. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask, so if you're in your studio, you've got all your tools and all your knickknacks and everything that you love, but I was to take away one thing, what would you not want that to be? Like the one thing that you're like, oh man, I can't get through my daily grind without that one tool or product.
Wow, that is a difficult question. I think it's almost impossible for me to answer because I'm thinking of it in such a broad spectrum. I think it's easier to ask that, like if we're talking specifically about life casting, and then talking about like making a positive, and then talking about sculpting, like every one of those facets.
I know
there's probably one thing within each one of those that I can't live without. Collectively, all together, I'm trying to think of the one product that I'd be like lost without. I mean, honestly, I think the thing that's like ringing in my mind, which has very little to do with the shop, but I mean, Skin Illustrator palettes to me are heavenly. I mean, I can't imagine not having that to do a makeup, and I use them when I'm doing finishing detail work on our silicone duplications, a fake head or a fake body or anything like that. I'll use them as well. Okay. Pre-painting prosthetics. I mean, that's definitely one that I feel like is ringing very, very true in my head.
There you go. There's always one that kind of pops up.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And who would you like to hear on the podcast?
Oh, it's another really good question. I would love to, you know what? I mentioned him earlier, and I think he would be a wonderful listen just because he's also coming from the lab perspective of things, is Rob Freitas. I think he would be an excellent person to chat with.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
Love it. Thank you so much for your time today, Vincent. It's been so amazing chatting with you.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm honored to be on your podcast.
For links to see more about our guests, go to our Instagram at The Last Looks Podcast or our website, thelastlookspodcast.com. If you want to keep up with new episodes being released, be sure to subscribe through Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon, Google Play, YouTube, or any podcast streaming platform. And remember, if you're enjoying the show, share it. The Last Looks podcast would like to thank Brett Stanley and Sabrina Castro. The song Fun Time by DJ Quads. Thanks for listening. Until next time.
That's a wrap, people.